Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Daf Yomi. To the thousands watching us live on YouTube this morning, on Zoom as well, our virtual studio audience. It's wonderful to have you on board today as we embark on the exciting world of Daf Memtes, page 49 of Maseches Yoma. I've forgotten once again to have my machzor. Previously on Maseches Yoma. So, as we said, the avoda that we talk about in Maseches Yoma is mentioned in the machzor, in the musaf of Yom Kippur. So we've gone through a whole thing about his various mikveh dunkings, and we spoke previously about the allocation, the lottery, to decide which of the two goats are going to be sent away as the scapegoat, which one's going to be offered up. On page 565, we come to the next part of the avoda in the English of the art scroll. He would take a sharp knife and slaughter the bull according to the proper procedure. He would accept the blood in a basin and hand it to the one who would stir to prevent its congealment until the time of sprinkling, lest it become congealed and atonement be prevented. He would gather glowing coals by scraping with a shovel of reddish gold, which was light, thin-walled, and long-handled. Into it he shoveled 3 kav of coals. They brought him a ladle filled with fine incense. He scooped up incense with both hands and emptied it into a ladle. He quickly grasped the shovel in his right hand and the ladle in his left, and his footsteps were heard between the curtains as he neared the staves of the ark. He placed the incense between them and caused their smoke to rise, and then he left. And that is where the story is up to with regards to our Gemara, a process known as chafina. It was a very intricate and demanding and difficult procedure to perform, but what the Kohen Gadol would have to do was somehow very skillfully get this handful of incense, which he would then pour on top of the coals. So we are dealing with chafina, and Rav Papa over the last couple of daf has been asking various questions about this process of chafina, and we are going to pick up the daf today, 12 lines down on Mem Tes Amud Aleph on page 49a. So we've got the words for you up on the screen over there. Thumbs up if you can see that. Fantastic. All right. So asks Rav Papa, boy Rav Papa, Chafan Chaveiro v'nasan lesoich chafanav mahu. What would the halacha be if a kohen was to do chafina? Right, another kohen was to do chafina, to pick up this handful of coals, v'nasan lesoich chafanav, and then he was to put it into the hands of the high priest. What would the halacha be? Does the fact that the pasuk says meloch chafnav, that his hands have to have a handful of incense, right? So the Kohen Gadol has to have a handful of incense. Ba'inan, we need that for ha'ikah. And he's got that. He's got a handful of incense. It's just that it's another Kohen who has put the incense into his hands. Or Dilma, or maybe the fact that the pasuk says velokach vehevi, and the Kohen should take, and then it says that he should bring it. So maybe velokach vehevi ba'inan. We need to have a process of taking and a process of bringing v'haleka, and we don't have a process of taking because the Kohen Gadol has had the incense put into his hand. So that's the dilemma that Rav Papa raises. Do we need to have a Kohen Gadol picking up the incense, or would it be enough for someone else to put the handful into his hands? And the Gemara says, Teku, let it be unresolved, let it stand as a question. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, but Teku famously is described as an acronym for Tishbi, Yetaretz, Kushas, Vishailas. That Eliyahu Hanavi will come and ultimately resolve these unresolved matters. But there we go. We don't reach a definitive conclusion as to whether this velakach in the verse means that he has to take it himself, or whether it just means that he has to take some incense. Boy, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi asked the following question. Chafan, if the Kohen Gadol did chafina, he scooped up this incense out of this ladle, and the ladle is a bowl with a long handle. So if he has done chafina, we're going to come to why it's so difficult. So if he's done chafina, umeis, but then the Kohen Gadol dies. Mahu shichanes acher b'chafina so. Would it be okay if the other Kohen Gadol who replaces him takes that handful and goes in to do the avodah of spilling this incense? Is it okay for another Kohen Gadol to come and do that? So Amar Rabbi Chanina says, Bo'orei she'elas harishonim. Come and see that rabbis from a later generation are asking similar questions or as difficult questions as people from earlier generations. So Rabbi Chanina is saying that in an excitable fashion, he's saying that he is asking a question that someone who was older than him and from a previous generation was also asking the question. He had the same question. So the Gemara asks, "Lemeimara de Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi kashish." Is this to say that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is older than Rabbi Chanina? V'ha'ama Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, but didn't Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi say, "Li hitir Rabbi Chanina lishtos shechalayim b'Shabbos"? Didn't Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi say that Rabbi Chanina had permitted him to drink cress juice on Shabbos for medicinal purposes? So that would seem then that Rabbi Chanina is older than Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. So now we're just going to sidetrack a little bit to talk about this shechalayim, this cress juice on Shabbos. So try not to lose focus and lose track of the question that had already been asked about chafina. So the Gemara says, Lishtos, why did he need permission to drink cress juice on Shabbos? Pshita, it's obvious that he would be allowed to do so. Ditnan, because it says in the Mishnah, that anything that is ordinarily eaten or ordinarily drunk, if they are regular food and drink items, then they can be consumed on Shabbos for medicinal purposes. We have a problem that you can't take medicine on Shabbos, except in situations of great need. But if it's something that would be regularly consumed, then if it had medicinal properties and benefits, then you would be allowed to eat them and drink them. So shachalayim should be permitted because of that. So Ella, the Gemara clarifies, lishchok v'lishtos shachalayim b'Shabbos. Rather, Rabbi Chanina permitted them to grind up this cress and to be able to drink shachalayim on Shabbos. That's what he was being permitted. Whereas ordinarily you wouldn't necessarily be able to do that. So Heichidami, what's the case? The Gemara asks. Ida ikasakanta, if the person's life is in danger, then Mishra Shari, then of course it should be permitted. The Ida lekasakanta, and if there's no danger to life, Mesa Asir, then it should be forbidden. Why would there be any circumstance where it should be permitted to grind up this cress? So La'olam, the Gemara answers, really, the ikasakanta, it's a situation where the person's life is in danger, but this was the question that was being asked. Mi masya denechel alayhu shabasa, or lo masya v'lo nechel alayhu shabasa. Is it actually something that can cure and that can heal? In which case, it is appropriate to violate Shabbos to prepare it, or does it not actually have any medicinal benefit? That won't actually heal the person, and therefore you shouldn't be allowed to violate Shabbos for it. The Gemara asks, Umay Shana Rabbi Chanina, why then do we need to go to Rabbi Chanina for this question? Mishum debaki b'refuasu, because he was a medicine expert. To Amar Rabbi Chanina, as we see elsewhere, the Rabbi Chanina said, Me'olam lo shalani adama makas preda levana v'chaya. Nobody ever consulted me about a wound inflicted by a white mule and was able to recover from it. which indicates to us that people did come to him with medical shilas, but no one ever came to him with a shaila about the injuries inflicted by a white mule, and that was because everybody knew that it would be dangerous. But nonetheless, he was the person to go to for medical questions. But we see that people who do get kicked by mules do survive. Still sidetracking over here. So Ema v'chayas. So the Gemara says that one second. So Ema v'chayas. So what we're saying is that nobody ever consulted him and was able to survive. The wound never heals. But we do see that it does heal, that people do recover from this. So the Gemara clarifies and says, "Basumkan inu v'chivaran reish karihu ka'amrina." So the Gemara answers and says that the times when you see that people are recovering from these injuries, that is only when the mules are actually red, but their ends of their feet are white. So we don't necessarily need to get so bogged down with the intricacies of the medical aspects of this particular part of the sugya. But suffice it to say, the Gemara says, "Mikol makom shemamina de Rabbi Chanina kashish." This was where we were getting to by bringing in this tangent, which is nonetheless we see that Rabbi Chanina was older than Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, and so we have the question from before, which is why did Rabbi Chanina say that, see, we're asking the same questions as people from the previous generation, and then using Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi as the benchmark. But Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is not older than Rabbi Chanina. So what was he talking about? So Ela Hachi Ka'amar. The Gemara says, rather, this is what we are trying to say. She'elasan k'she'ela shel rishonim. Their question is like the question of the early ones, of the elder ones, of people from previous generation. Meaning that the question that they are asking here about chafina being done by a replacement Kohen Gadol, if the first one dies, that is a question that will have been dealt with, or similar questions of similar difficulty will have been asked by previous generations. Umi am Rabbi Chanina hachi. Did Rabbi Chanina actually say that this question is difficult to answer? V'ha'ama Rabbi Chanina, but Rabbi Chanina said, with regards to the par of the Kohen Gadol, in a similar situation, we'll see where the bull has been shechted, and then the bull has been shechted by someone, and then it falls to the Kohen Gadol to bring in the blood. That's going to be the parallel question that we're dealing with over here. So we've asked a question of, if I've got a scoop full of incense, which the Kohen Gadol needs to bring, but the first Kohen Gadol has died, and now there's going to be a replacement one bringing it, who hasn't scooped up his own incense, but he is using someone else's scoop. The parallel issue that we're now going to be looking at is with regards to the bull of the Kohen Gadol. If someone goes and slaughters that bull, and the Kohen Gadol is the one who has to bring the blood, is that going to be sufficient if he hasn't done the slaughtering? So, for Ha'ama Rabbi Chanina says, Papar, the verse says that with this, that Aaron HaKohen is going to come with a par, is going to come with a bull into the sacred place. So, Velo b'damo shel par, we learn from here that it's going to be insufficient if he is just coming with the blood of the bull, meaning that if someone other than the Kohen Gadol had slaughtered the bull, then it's going to not be sufficient. The Kohen Gadol is going to have to slaughter the bull and then bring the blood. So that is what we start off with when we quote that sugya. V'amar Rabbi Chanina, and Rabbi Chanina says, "Ketores shechafna kodem shchita sapar lo asav lo klum." Rabbi Chanina says that if the Kohen Gadol was to scoop the incense before the slaughtering of the bull, lo asav lo klum, then he hasn't done anything, and that's because the handful of incense must be taken after the slaughter of the bull. In which case, In which case the logical extension will be that that the Kohen Gadol cannot take incense from another handful. And the reason for that is if the first Kohen Gadol dies after the handful is taken, then he has not yet come into he's not come in with the blood that he's collected, which means that his slaughter was not effective for the next Kohen Gadol. And so we have a very big problem on our hands. So Hachi Ka'amar, the Gemara says as follows. This is what Rabbi Chanina was saying. Midika miboile, from the fact that we're asking the question, the fact that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is asking the question, HaMichlal de Kasava Papar, Vafilu Bedamo Shapar, that would lead us to conclude that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi must have the opinion that somebody else could slaughter the bull and then the Kohen Gadol could bring in that blood. So when the verse talks about the Kohen Gadol bringing the par, it really means the blood of the par. So even if someone else did the slaughtering, that is still going to work. So regarding the fact that the question is difficult, like the question of the earlier generations, that's what Rabbi Chanina is saying, that in Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's world, where it's okay to bring the blood, even if the Kohen Gadol has not done the actual sacrifice, that is why in Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's world, you could be asking the equally difficult question of taking the handful of incense from another Kohen. But now let's actually have a look at what the halachic conclusion should be. So the Gemara says, "My havi Allah." What is the actual halacha with regards to all of this? It's lovely seeing the lomdus. It's lovely seeing the logic. Where do we actually get to with all of this? So Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says it's going to be dependent on whether we hold of chofein, choser, v'chofein. It's going to depend on whether the Kohen Gadol has to take a handful of incense, then put it back, then put it into the ladle, and then will he have to scoop it out again in another handful before pouring it onto the coals? That's what the question is going to rest on, according to Rav Papa. So, if you are going to hold that the Kohen Gadol has to scoop the incense, put it into a ladle, and then before he pours it onto the coals, he has to scoop it out again, then we can look at it in the following way. Then, according to this position, another Kohen Gadol should be able to enter if the first one is not able to because he died. So the second priest is going in to the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and he is taking a chafina. He is taking a handful. So we are fulfilling that requirement. But if the Kohen Gadol is not doing this, he's taking the ladle in after the handful has been done already, and then it's been scooped and it's been put into the ladle, and then the Kohen Gadol is taking it into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and then he is pouring it straight. So then, Tibayla, then you're going to have a question, because there is now no second chafina being performed by this new Kohen Gadol. So Amalei Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua Rav Papa. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says to Rav Papa, Adarabba, actually, the logic is the other way around. If we hold that the Kohen Gadol would take a handful, a scoopful, put it into the ladle, and then would take it out again with his hands before placing it down, then lo yikanes acher b'chafina. Then it's not going to work for a second Kohen to come in and do it, because it's going to be impossible that the size of the handful is going to be identical. We have a requirement that the scoopful, the handful, has to be the same size, but that's impossible because different people have different sized hands. So a new Kohen Gadol is going to find it very difficult to take exactly the same size handful as the one which was taken. And also, if you do not need to take the second scoop, then you're also going to have this dilemma of the second Kohen doing it, because he won't have taken a handful. Because the question was asked. This is the background to this question. Do we require the Kohen Gadol to take the scoopful a second time? Tashma, come and listen. Kach haisa midasa. This was the measure of the spoon. This is the start of how we resolve the dilemma from our Mishnah. So, Kach haisa midasa, this is the quote. This was the measurement, the size of the spoon. So, what are we talking about here? Lav kashem shemidasa mibachutz, kach midasa mibifnim. Does this not mean that the measure of the spoon, the amount that was taken, had to be the same on the outside before the Kohen Gadol went in, when he puts it into the ladle, as it is when he goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, meaning that it's going to be the same size outside beforehand as it is inside? Lo, that's not what we're saying. The Gemara says, Dilma she'im ratza la'asos mida oser. What it means is that if he wants to measure a precise amount for this handful, he is entitled to do so. Inami shelo yachsar shelo yachaser v'shelo yatir. Alternatively, it could mean that it has to be identical in size, the measurement that he took and the measurement that gets put down. But what we see from here is that there's no proof either way as to whether the Kohen Gadol requires a second gesture of chafina, a second scoopful, taking it out of the ladle. So we are not yet in a position to answer our question. So the Gemara is going to come again with another attempt. So Tashma, as we turn the page to Mem Tes Amud Beis, Ketzad Hu Osen. What is the process of the incense? Now we've been probably having this at the back of our minds as to how this is even working, but here is where the Gemara talks about the actual process of the incense. And now we come to why it is such a difficult process. So the Gemara says, Oches es habazech barosh etz ba'osav. The Kohen Gadol is going to hold the ladle with his fingertips. V'yesh omrim b'shinav. And there are some who say that he is holding the handle of this ladle with his teeth. And then what he has to do is umale b'gudalo ad shmagas leveinat sile yadav. And then what he has to do is he has to not navigate, but he has to figure out a way of pushing up the ladle, raising it slowly with his thumb towards his body until it reaches his elbows, and then and then he will be able to quite awkwardly tip the ladle and tip the incense into his hands, v'tsovra, and then he is going to heap up the incense into a pile, and it's going to go onto the coals very slowly, so that the smoke is going to rise slowly. And there are those who say Mefazra, that actually he does it in a bit of a quicker fashion. Mefrazah, and he scatters the incense in order that the smoke rises quickly. But whichever way he's doing it, whatever the actual process is, where he's trying to awkwardly tip this incense in a particular way that is crucial for him to do, it's a very difficult process, the Gemara says. And this is why the handful of incense is an extremely difficult avoda to be done in the Beis HaMikdash. So a little bit of a sidetrack over here. Zohi Masula, this one's the difficult one, and there's no other difficult ones. V'ha'ika Malika, but there's the process of Malika, where the Kohen Gadol would have to, or where a Kohen would have to snip the simanim of birds in being offered as sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash. So that's a very difficult procedure. V'ha'ika kamitza, and there's the avoda of kamitza, taking the fistful of flour from a mincha. That's also very difficult. So how could we say that this is the difficult avoda to be done? So Ella The Gemara says, rather, Zohi avodah kasha me'avodos kashos sheba mikdash. This is one of the most difficult avodas to be done in the Beis Hamikdash. But what we see from here, ladies and gentlemen, is Shema Mina. What this teaches us, what this implies, for all intents and purposes, is Chofein v'chozeh v'chofein, that the Kohen Gadol would take a scoop of the incense, he would put it into a ladle, and then before putting it into the coals, he has to take another chafina. He has to take another handful, another scoopful of this incense before placing it on the coals. Shema Mina. Indeed, the Gemara says that is what we can learn from this source, and therefore it has relevance to our question, because we'd asked the question of if a Kohen Gadol dies and then a replacement Kohen Gadol is going to be taking in this chafina, is that going to work? And it would seem that it could potentially work, because the Kohen Gadol is going to need to do chafina, and even though he missed the first one, there is going to be an opportunity nonetheless for the second chafina to be performed. It's not easy to follow, but hopefully it was somewhat clear. And if not, you got the whole day to be able to review. Iboilahu, the question was asked. Shachat umes. So if the bull, going back to this bull again, if the bull was slaughtered and then the Kohen Gadol dies, Mahu shikanes acher b'damo, is another Kohen allowed to take over this process now and take in the blood? So a similar question, similar structure to what we had talked about. Mi amrinan, do we say that since the verse said bapar, that the Kohen has to come in with the par, va'afilu b'damo shel par, and that means even with the blood of the bull if it was slaughtered by somebody else, do we say that that is how we can learn our pasuk? Or Dilma, or maybe when the verse said bapar, that the Kohen Gadol has to bring in a bull, v'lo b'damo shel par, means that the bull has to be slaughtered by him as well. And so he can't just come in with blood from a bull that was slaughtered by a previous Kohen Gadol, or by any Kohen. It has to have been slaughtered by him, and the blood has to have been brought by him as well. So that is the question, that is the background to being able to answer the question of whether if a animal is slaughtered and someone else brings the blood, whether that will be valid. So Rabbi Chanina Omer, Rabbi Chanina says, and we all remember this from a few lines ago, Bapar v'lo b'damo shel par. It means that he has to slaughter the bull and bring the blood. It's not enough just to come in with the blood. For Reish Lakish, Omar Bapar v'afilu b'damo shel par. Reish Lakish takes the opposite stance, that if somebody else had slaughtered it, it can still be valid if the Kohen Gadol brings the blood. Rabbi Ami Omar, Rabbi Ami says, Bapar v'lo b'damo shel par, he says the same as Rabbi Chanina, that it has to have been slaughtered and the blood brought by the same Kohen. Rabbi Yitzchak Omar Bapar v'afilu b'damo shel par, and Rabbi Yitzchak holds the same as Reish Lakish, that the par doesn't have to have been slaughtered by him. As long as he's still bringing the blood, then that's okay. But now we have a challenge on this. Eisavei Rabbi Ami le Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Rabbi Ami challenged Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, and he challenges it by talking about the Korban Pesach. This is where he's going to bring his objection from. Nimnin umoshchin yedehen mimenu ad sheyishcha. When it comes to bringing a Korban Pesach, one is allowed to register their name for a Korban Pesach until the point of Shechita, right? So up until the point of Shechita, you can put your name down for one Korban Pesach party, and you can take your name off that list again and put it on another list. You can chop and change which Korban Pesach you are going to commit to, but only until the point of Shechita, right? So that's the halacha by Korban Pesach. So the Gemara says, Ve'im Isa, and if it is so that the Kohen Gadol can still bring the blood that was of a bull that was slaughtered by someone else, Ad sheyizrak miboile, then really, my kids are playing with walkie-talkies in the background. Can you hear that? No, excellent. So if you want to say that that the Kohen Gadol, even after the Shechita, can bring in the blood that was slaughtered from a bull that was slaughtered by someone else, then the halacha for a Korban Pesach should be that you can withdraw your name and you can change which party you're going to join for the Korban Pesach ad sheyizrak, until the sprinkling has been done. Because clearly, from our case, Shechita doesn't actually impact anything. So why should it impact it for the Korban Pesach? Why should you not be able to change your Korban Pesach party until after the sprinkling has been done? So the Gemara says, Shani Hasam, it's different for a Korban Pesach, Dichsiv, because it says over there in the Psukim dealing with a Korban Pesach, it says Mihiyos Miseh, that the context of this is it says if the household is too small for a lamb, and yet we learn from here Michayuse Deseh, that you can chop and change within the lifetime of the Korban Pesach, meaning that as long as the lamb is still alive, you're going to be able to change which Korban Pesach party you want to have designated under your name. So that's not enough of a challenge then to prove that the bull has to have been slaughtered by the same Kohen Gadol who brings the blood. So Mesiv Mar Zutra, we have another challenge. Mar Zutra brings a rejection, an objection. Ein Podin, talking about a Peter Chamor, redeeming a male firstborn donkey. So the Gemara, or the Mishnah, the Gemara says, Ein Podin, you can't redeem a Peter Chamor, firstborn donkey, lo be'egel, with a calf, v'lo b'chaya, or with an undomesticated animal, v'lo b'shchuta, or with a slaughtered lamb, v'lo b'treifa, not with an animal that has a terminal illness that will kill it within 12 months, v'lo b'kilayim, not with a crossbreeded animal, v'lo b'koi, not with a koi, which is a type of animal that has what does it say there? It has characteristics of both a domesticated animal and a non-domesticated. It's a very hazy, halachically definable animal. Elabaseh. The only thing that you can redeem your firstborn male donkey on is a lamb, which proves then that a slaughtered animal is not a lamb. Why is that relevant? Can't remember why. The reason why that is not relevant is because we said it can't be redeemed with a. Oh, right. It can't be redeemed on a slaughtered lamb, and that's because it's going to be too late. It has to be redeemed on an actual lamb, and so it's only still considered to be a useful lamb if it is before the point of shchita, which therefore is a challenge to ourselves over here, because how can the Kohen Gadol bring blood from a bull if it's not his bull? It wasn't alive when it wasn't alive for him to slaughter it. So the Gemara says Shani Hasam is different over there with regards to the Petech Hamur, the Yalif, because we learn the halacha for Petech Hamur from a Korban Pesach. The Yalif se mi Pesach. We learn out the application of the halacha for a seh for a firstborn donkey from the seh of the Korban Pesach. The usage of the word seh in the verses relating to both those topics is how we learn the halacha from one to the other. I malahalan zachar tamu ben shana. Just like over there with the Korban Pesach, it has to be a male lamb. Oh, let's scroll down a bit. It has to be a male lamb. It has to be unblemished, and it has to be at least 1 year old. Afkan, for being able to redeem a firstborn donkey, it has to be a zachar. It has to be a male. Tam, it has to be unblemished. Uben shana, and it has to be at least 1 year old. Talmud Lomar, the verse states, Tipadeh, Tipadeh. with regards to, just 1 second, I'm really sorry. So the verses say, tipade, tipade. It says that you shall redeem. It says it once, and then it says it again. So the verse says, tifte. Every firstborn donkey you shall redeem, beseh, with a set. Vim lo tifte, and if you don't redeem it, then there's a process of breaking the animal's neck if you can't redeem it. So the fact that tifte is repeated, so the Gemara learns out a riba. It learns out an amplification, and it includes other animals which could be acceptable for this redemption. Not only animals that are suitable for use for a Korban Pesach. So then the Gemara would have to ask, tifte riba, if we learn out this amplification that actually any animal could be used for the redemption, afilu kulunami, then really anything could be used as a suitable animal to redeem the Peter Chamor, the firstborn donkey on. Im kain sa maya hanile. In which case, we would have to ask the question, why does the verse need to say that it can only be done with a set? So, what emerges from this with regards to the redemption of the donkey is that it can only be used, it can only be redeemed on a set, and we learned that it can only be redeemed on a live set, can only be redeemed on a live lamb. And since that is the case, we are not yet able to definitively prove that with regards to the bull and the Kohen Gadol being able to just sprinkle blood from an animal that he did not sacrifice, we have not yet refuted that challenge. And that would have to be picked up on tomorrow's daf, but that is all we've got time for on today's daf. So we wish everybody a wonderful and meaningful day. Good luck in really getting to grips with the content in today's daf. It wasn't easy, and the logic is quite difficult to follow at times, but hopefully it's been somewhat clear. Either way, we'll see you again next week for Daf Yomi, and in the meantime, we wish you a wonderful and meaningful day.